Are vegans killing all the bees? No, this is incorrect. It is true that many bees around the world die every single year. But what's not true is that vegans are causing those deaths, because most of the bees that die are dying because of things like parasites, mites, pathogens, pesticides, and habitat loss, all of which are driven by the meat and dairy industries. Bees and other insects are incredibly important for pollinating many crops around the world. 30% of crops are pollinated by insects. But most of the crops that these bees are specifically pollinating for are being fed to the animals, not for humans, for animal meat. Alfalfa and clover, these are products that dairy cows consume, are being pollinated by bees. Even crazier, 80% of all the land that we use as humans to farm things and grow crops like corns and soybeans and wheat, these are used to feed animals. Think of all the pesticides that we're using to grow these crops. When a bee or a wasp comes nearby and tries to, eat the nectar or the pollen from these plants, well, guess what? They're going to get that pesticide exposure. That's how many of these bees are dying. If we didn't have the corn and soy and wheat that we had to grow for all these animals that you guys are eating, then we wouldn't have so many bees dying. And much of that land that we have to cut down to grow all these corn and soybean fields for these animals, well, guess what? Those used to be bee habitats where they had different diverse arrays of plants that they were able to eat their nectar and pollen from. When you have all these corn and soy fields, these monoculture crops, there's less diversity. Now all the bees that were once in a healthy habitat are now finding themselves in crop fields and soy fields where they can only get certain nutrients. Now they're limited to how many nutrients they get. And there's evidence that this is making these bees more susceptible to diseases. Most of these bees that are dying is not because of vegans, but because of mites and pathogens that they succumb to. In the US, we have honeybees for the honey industry, things that I don't support. But then guess what? These almond and avocado manufacturers are renting out these honeybees to pollinate their crops. Whereas what we should be doing, and where I source my avocados, is from places like Mexico, where they don't use honeybees, they use social bees, which are not being tortured. As a vegan, I recognize that some animals are going to have to die in order to produce crops. That's something I acknowledge. I can't be perfect. No system can be perfect. I gotta eat something. So of course there's going to have to be some insects that die for a vegan or anybody. We can't escape that. Unless you want to just have everybody starve to death, we can't escape that. However, all I'm saying is that I can reduce the amount of intentional death I'm causing. That's what I'm doing. I don't intend for those bees to die because of pesticide use. That's just a farmer protecting their crops. Vegans are objectively reducing the amount of animals being killed and the amount of bees and insects being killed because all the evidence demonstrates that meat eating causes lots of deforestation, lots of crop production, and lots of water usage. In fact, one study shows that if everybody went vegan, we'd actually reduce cropland by 75% and be able to feed everybody on the planet. Because meat and dairy is just so inefficient, ethically and environmentally. Now, it's hard to determine exactly how many insects die per year. There is no solid research on this. But from all the research I've seen, it's obvious and clear that veganism is the better ethical way.